It's already time to start looking ahead to potential playoff matchups for boys and girls hockey. And meanwhile, the girls and boys basketball teams are just past the halfway mark of their seasons.
Welcome back to another episode of SportsZone. I'm Toby Stanga. She is Alexis Huss. Back to the icebox from the sunny confines of the Caribbean.
Yep.
Welcome back. You missed some stuff last week, but we had some really good games, and we've got teams that are gearing up for the playoffs. And for girls hockey, it is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Brackets come out in less than a week.
Yeah, girls teams have 2 or 3 games left each at this point in the season. Boys have about 4 or 5. So, I mean, we are literally weeks away from playoff hockey.
Well, let's start the show with the best team in our area, regardless of the sport. That's the St. Thomas Academy Cadets. We've got a banger of a game coming up on Thursday. They're going to host Shakopee, 2 teams that are ranked. Shakopee 3, St. Thomas 4. St. Thomas, since the last show, they tied Moorhead, and then they rattled off 5 straight wins against a pretty tough schedule that we've been talking about all year. But this team just continues to just chug along. They've got so much scoring. 11 different players with 10-plus points, 20 different goal scorers. They've been tremendous. I can't wait for that game on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about what they've done in this recent stretch of games. You mentioned the winning streak. They've outscored their opponents 27-4 in that stretch, which, again, you could pick pretty much any chunk of games this season, and they're outscoring their opponents by about that margin this season. There are 4 losses on the season. 2 of those losses were by just a goal to Maple Grove and Edina. So you talk about some of the good teams they've won against. There's some good teams that they've just barely lost against as well. I mean, this isn't a team that really gets blown out. They're pretty much in every single game. Their goaltending is tremendous. You talked about some of their goal scorers, but they're getting great goaltending as well. Owen Ryan, who's taken the bulk of the minutes this season, is a 1.6 goals against average, which is crazy to have at this point in the season, let alone at any point in the season. Both goaltenders have 3 shutouts each, so even their backup goaltender is coming in and getting them wins in dramatic fashion when they need them. So there's a lot to like about this team, and I was trying to find something I didn't like. If you want to pick one thing that I would like to see improve before the end of the season, they've had 4 games go to overtime, Toby. They're 0-2-2 in those games. So you're going to see a lot of games like that come the postseason and come the end of the season where it's going to be tight games. You might have some overtime games. I'd love to see them find ways to win in those games because they've fallen short in a couple of them and come out with ties, which obviously you won't get to do in the postseason. So that's the one thing I want to see them do better. Everything else, A+ for me.
Well, you talked about Owen Ryan. I noticed this today. He's only a freshman.
Yeah.
He's a freshman. That's crazy. So they've got and your backup Crary. His stats are incredible too. Brownhausen probably going to be in the running for Mr. Hockey. They're still looking for that first Class 2A title since moving up.
Shakopee and Hill Marie are really the 2 toughest remaining opponents they have. I think everybody else is a winnable game for them, especially seeing what they've done this rest of the season. So this Thursday game is going to be huge, and then Hill Marie will be a fun one to watch as well. Everybody else they should be able to handle.
And they got White Bear Lake in there too, another top 20 team. Let's stay in the section and this Two Rivers in this section. Two Rivers, they graduated so much scoring last year, so they're trying to kind of replace that. Only scoring 2.5 goals a game, so the scoring just isn't there. We've kind of talked about that all year. They're looking to be like a 6th seed, a 7th seed, and they've got the nice part is they've got some winnable games coming up down the stretch to kind of boost that section standing a little bit. But this section again is so tough. Rosemount, St. Thomas probably your 1, and then Cretin, Durham Hall, Egan. It's just such a tough section for Two Rivers, a team that we finally got to see. To their credit, we saw them against Simley, and they had an 8-0 victory. So they looked very strong against Simley. Simley has their own struggles we'll talk about in a minute, but Two Rivers kind of still has some time to add some wins to their total here and move up. Yeah,
they don't have back-to-back wins at any point this season, but with this remaining schedule, I think there's a chance for them to build on that. And like you said, I liked what we saw out of them in that game, despite the fact that Simley's not a great hockey team this year. So maybe there's some potential there to move up. They had 19 wins last season. They're going to fall well short of that this year, no matter what they do the rest of the way. And, you look at their losses, 7 of their 11 losses are by 3 or more goals. When you're not getting the scoring, allowing that many goals, it's just really tough to hang in games, and their results have shown that.
They've got 2 players that are in double-digit points. We talked about St. Thomas had 10, and then only 6 players that have more than 1 goal on the year. So that's just kind of been the Achilles heel for Two Rivers. Jump over to Section 4A. So this is actually going to be pretty interesting. South St. Paul and Simley. South St. Paul, we kind of talked about it last show. Their scoring had dipped a little bit in a a brief stretch. Looks like that's come up a little bit since the last show. They're 3-2. Of course, those 2 losses came against Hill Murray and Matamidi. Nothing wrong with that. The interesting part between them and Simley is they're all battling for that 5 through 7 spot in the section where they should all land against each other with Tartan in there. They're all 1-1. They've all beat up against each other with 2 games coming up against each other each. We are getting that game versus Tartan, I think, on February 5th. So that's going to be a big one for playoff seeding, but still time for both these teams to kind of move around and jockey themselves, try to get up a little higher in the standings, help themselves as much as possible.
Like you said, South St. Paul has come up a little bit since the last time we talked about them, winning 3 of their last 5 games. You talked about the couple teams they lost to in there. They are coming off their highest scoring win since the beginning of the season, beating SPA 8-4 recently here. So that's nice to see them getting a little bit more scoring. Their next 4 games are on the road. St. Paul and Two Rivers are winnable games, but they're going to have some tough matchups against STA and Chisago Lakes. So kind of a mixed bag schedule remaining for them here. They do have a lot of players in double-digit scoring. There's 9 this season in double digits. Last year, they had only 2 players who had more than 8 points on the season. So a lot to like for the South St. Paul team, and I think some potential to move up here a little bit. Simley, well short of 500 at this point in the season. They finished just shy of 500 last year. They're allowing almost 5 goals per game. They're scoring under 2 per game. That's been the story for them all season long, Toby. It's just been tough for them to find ways to pick up goals in the season, which has made it really hard for them to win. They had a pretty good start to the season, but they've only won 1 game in the month of January, and it came against 3-win St. Paul. So just not a lot going right for this Simley team. They're a minus 13 goal differential in the first period, and there's no period where they have a positive goal differential, just to go to show a little further their scoring struggles. So I think they have some talent on this team. When we saw them, there was a lot I liked about them, but they're just not getting the goals, and it's obviously hard to win when you can't do that.
We saw them lose 3-0 to South St. Paul, and then, like we said, 8-0 to Two Rivers. So last 8 games, 1-7, only 4 goals scored, and they were shut out 6 times. So if you can't put the puck in the net, you're not gonna do much. Well, let's jump over to girls hockey, and kind of a bleak year for our girls hockey teams. Let's start with the Riveters. They're the lone team right now that are sitting above 500, and we talked about it before. They're in, we'll get to the section in a second, but just uphill battle this year that they're going to be facing in the playoffs. But they've won 6 in a row, and they're looking like they're going to be a 6 seed and likely have to play like maybe Stillwater, something like that. This section, again, is loaded. You got Woodbury, who we saw in the Kaposia Classic. That team is one of the best teams in state. Then you got Hill, who's also one of the best teams in state, Stillwater and Eastridge. So it's going to be, no matter who you get, you're going to have your hands full in the playoffs. And
it's really too bad because they are having such a great season. And if you look at their records since these 2 schools have merged, St. Paul and Two Rivers, it's the best season that they've had since the schools have merged. The next best season that they had was in 2021, 2022, when they had 14 wins. They're at 15 right now with a couple more games to go. So they've really done a lot of good things this year. They're getting a lot of goal scoring, 8 players in double-digit scoring, 4 of them with 20 or more points. They've got 2 players averaging a point a game. Their penalty kill is above 90%, so there's a lot to love about what this team is doing. It's just too bad that whoever they get in the playoffs, it's going to be tough. And the silver lining to this is that it seems they're picking up speed here at the end of the season with the winning streak that they're on, a chance to maybe pick up a win against South St. Paul, but then they have 13-win Eastridge coming up at the end of the year. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. We'll see what they can do. Maybe we get a nice big upset from them, but it's going to be a tough playoff matchup.
And I think that Eastridge game to end the season at Eastridge is going to kind of be a litmus test to see where they're sitting going into the playoffs. But man, this section is just so loaded. And the Riveters is a team that probably could benefit being in down a section with some of our other teams. Let's talk about the other team that will actually host a playoff game. That's the Simley Spartans. That's a game on February 4th. I believe we're going to try to cover that over at Vets Arena. They should be the 3 seed, and Simley is 3-1-1 in the last 5 games, and they should be a 3 seed. Should host probably South Central, who is scoring 1 goal per game and giving up 10. So a good chance for Simley to kind of blow the doors open to start the playoffs. But they could use a little bit more help offensively. they played after the boys on Saturday against Visitation, tied Visitation 2-2. So that's not a result I think stands out real well for Simley. So some concerns going into the playoffs, but should at least be favored in that first round.
Well, and their 2 remaining games are against 4-win Visitation and 2-win Northern Tier. You talked about that tie against Visitation earlier in the season, but those are winnable games if you play your cards right. You talk about their scoring. Their leading scorer, Ella Sanders, has 41 points, which on any roster is an incredible stat. But their only other player in double-digit scoring is Jory Staples, and there's really not much after that. So their leading scorer, incredible. Their goaltending, incredible. Everything else kind of in between that is a little sketchy at times for them. And I think if they got some more depth scoring, this would be a much better team. But they're just not getting it, and it's been tough. And Mackenzie Reese, we've talked about it before. She faces a lot of shots. A lot of shots. And her save percentage right now is .916, which is impressive considering how many shots she faces night in, night out. She's got 4 shutouts on the season. So there is things to like about this team, but they're just missing some of that supplemental scoring, and that's why they haven't been able to win as much this season.
Yeah, their goals against is 2.7, which is pretty solid. So just got to get some more offense going. Let's jump over to Section 4A, and just a down year for South St. Paul and then Visitation, who's been struggling. We've talked about it all year. South St. Paul 2-3 since the last show. They are looking like they're probably going to be a 5 seed. They've lost to Blake. They've lost to Chisago. They've lost to everybody in this section with the exception of Visitation, I think. So they're going to be a 5. They're going to have to travel to a team that's already beat them to get anything to happen. For Visitation, a team that kind of in the same boat. Both these teams are going to have to go on the road, and it's going to be an uphill battle. So might be the first year in quite some time that we don't cover a game in this section.
Yeah, and these two teams, for me, the biggest thing is their goaltending. They're just not getting the goaltending they need. And I know especially for South St. Paul, you're working through some young goaltending troubles there, which that'll work itself out eventually with some help and some experience. But these two teams not scoring enough, not getting the goaltending they need, and especially for South St. Paul, just unusual to see them this low in the standings at this point in the season.
Well, good thing is you can ride a hot goaltender in the playoffs. So maybe something will happen and somebody will have an upset or two. But we'll take a break. We'll be back with Hoops right after this. Welcome back to SportsZone. I'm Toby. She's Alexis. Alexis, let's get right into hoops. We still got about a third of the season left for our teams, but things are really starting to get interesting, really starting to take shape. We got a chance to see a couple more teams over the last couple of weeks. But let's start things off with Section 2A with Visitation of St. Croix Lutheran. We were supposed to see Visitation host Blake last Thursday, but with the temperatures in the pushing -40, we canceled that one. They ended up winning that game by 20, and Jaeger went off for 31 points. So tough game for us to miss, but our equipment doesn't work so well in the cold. But they are clipping right along. Visitation 9-6 right now, sitting in that section of 18 teams. They're right there right now with the number 2 QRF. So things are looking good. They've got 10 games left. They took a whooping to De La Salle, but there's been a lot of teams losing to De La Salle. But they just keep clicking right along, and I don't know if we'll get a chance to see them before the playoffs, but we have both liked what we've seen with them all year. And
that loss against De La Salle is their only loss in their last 5 games, so that's really the only bleak spot for them as of late. They've been held to under 50 points just twice this season, and for the girls' side of things, that's a pretty impressive stat. They have 3 games remaining in January, 1 against a team with a losing record, 2 against teams with winning records, so it should be a nice couple of battles here to close out the month here. They're pretty nicely spread out in scoring. They've got Warford and Jaeger averaging over 10 points each per game, 4 players averaging about 6 or more points per game. And to me, if you're kind of right in that sweet spot of mid to high single digits, in addition to a couple players averaging over double digits, you're in pretty good hands. 6 of their wins have been by 15 or more points. I mean, they've been able to take care of business when they've needed to this year. 21-8 record last season, sitting at 9-6 right now. They're probably, if they continue this pace, going to come close to that. We'll see what they can do here in the final stretch of the season.
And I think 3 or 4 of their losses have been by 2 or 3 points. points.
Yes,
So they're in all the games pretty much. And they have beat they have beat St. Agnes, who's sitting at that 3 spot right now. So looking pretty good seeding wise. Let's drop a little bit lower in the section. St. Croix Lutheran Academy. We had a chance to finally see them again, taking on Two Rivers. And tough matchup for St. Croix Lutheran Academy against a really good Two Rivers team, and especially a team that doesn't have a lot of depth.
Yeah.
We saw in warm-ups, Sarah Wurst, one of their top players, turned an ankle in warm-ups and didn't play, and she hasn't played since then. So hopefully she can get back before the playoffs because they need all the depth they can get. But you've got basically Callie Oakland and Amaya Penn, and then there's a huge drop-off after that.
Well, Sarah Wurst was the next one after that.
Sarah Wurst is kind of right there after that. But it's just a team that 8-8 right now, so not terrible. A team that I think has higher aspirations, but see what they can do if they can get healthy before the playoffs, and see what they can do kind of as we close out the regular season. But lacking that depth, things have been tough this year.
Well, I feel like when we watch them, the eye test shows they're maybe a better team than what their record shows. I feel like when you see them play in person, you think, wow, this is a pretty good team. They've got some really stud players that are able to, rack up the points, and they seem to work hard. They've got good coaching, but it just seems they fall too short on the losing side of things. They've lost 3 of their last 4. Nice 2-point win over 3-loss Maranatha Christian in mid-January. That was an impressive win that stood out to me, but it's kind of been tough for them over the last couple of games. Their next really tough opponent is going to be St. Croix Prep on February 9th, who already beat them once this season by 6 points. So it was a close game, but they did fall short in that one. And like you said, the lack of depth scoring has been an issue. They've scored less than 50 points only 5 times this season, but 4 of those games have come in this tough stretch in January. So it seems like they're in a lot of games. At times they're not, and it just, if they could get some more scoring behind Oakland and Penn, this team would be really solid. I mean, Callie Oakland's averaging like 25 points per game, which is incredible at this point in the season. So they have a lot of things to be excited about, but a loss of a player like Sarah Wurst, who was basically their 3rd best scorer, that could be tough depending on how long she's out.
Well, and what's more impressive about Oakland is the 20 rebounds she's almost averaging per game, which is the highest one of the highest in the states on either the boys or the girls side. That game you mentioned on the 9th, St. Croix Prep, we will have that one for Game of the Week. So that should be a really fun one with a lot of playoff implications on the line. Let's jump over to the team that beat them in that game, Two Rivers, and Two Rivers just keeps cooking along, 6-2 over their last 8. We saw them just completely, I think, dominate St. Croix Lutheran Academy. I think St. Croix Lutheran actually led that one early, and Two Rivers just dominated them. They are just such a good team. One of their top players, Williamson Andrews, I don't think we've even seen her in the games we've covered.
No.
And so she hasn't even been in there in those games that we've seen, and they've been smoking teams. So this is just a fun team to watch. They fly around. They get, they're averaging, we don't have the stats, but probably between 15 and 20 steals a game.
Yeah.
They're just fun to watch. They can do it on offense, do it on defense, a good combo.
Yeah, and if they play their cards right, they could finish with about the same record they had last year, 18 wins on the season. They're sitting at 13 right now. They have back-to-back losses for just the first time this season. Those came against Hill Murray and Richfield. They've kept their opponent to under 35 points 8 times this season. To me, that was one of the most impressive things digging through the stats of this team is, to be able to really lower the scoring. The steals have a lot to play into that. Their fast break opportunities they create for themselves. So they just kind of fly around. They don't give their opponent a lot of opportunities. They've got 3 players all averaging double digits. So they've got a couple teams remaining on the schedule with winning records. Other than that, they should be able to pick up some wins. Hastings, Tartan, and Delano are going to be the toughest remaining opponents for them.
I was going to say, in their last 7 games, 6 of them they've already played, and they beat those 6 teams somewhere between 20 and 60 by 20 and 60 points. So they should win 6 of those games, and then at Delano on the 19th will be the one that might give them some trouble. But they're going to end up with a pretty gaudy record. It's a shame that Two Rivers is always on that bubble of which class they're in. They got bumped up this last classification, so they're up in 4 right now, which is a really
it's pretty tough,
a really good section.
Yeah.
But if they would have been in 3A like they were last year, would have a chance to get back to state. They haven't been to state in almost 30 years. So good team. Let's see what they can do. If they can be healthy, they might be a lot of trouble in the playoffs. Let's go to Simley. Let's close with Simley and South St. Paul. Simley 1-7 in the last 8. South St. Paul 1-10 in the last 11. Incomplete stats online. Don't know a ton about them, but they both play each other coming up. They both play North St. Paul coming up. So a chance to kind of get maybe a win or two before the playoffs, but two teams that are not scoring points and giving up a fair amount of points. So a couple teams struggling as we kind of round out the regular season here.
Yeah, for Simley, they've only won once in the month of January. They have a couple tough opponents to close out the month of January, and they haven't won back-to-back games since the very start of the season when they won 3 of 4, sitting at just 5 wins on the season. They had 6 last year, so unfortunately looking like a similar finish to the season for them. South St. Paul, unfortunately, even more disappointing, just 3 wins on the season. Their 3 wins have come against teams with a combined 6 wins, so they're not beating, any teams with gaudy records and coming up with these big underdog wins. They've lost 6 in a row, and 4 times in that stretch they scored less than 25 points. So just unfortunately not a lot to like between the South St. Paul Packers and Simley Spartans right now.
Well, it's close with boys basketball, and I feel like there is a lot to like with a lot of our teams.
Yeah.
A lot of talented teams, a lot of teams capable of upsets. Let's start in the Skyline Conference with St. Croix Lutheran Academy. 10-6 overall, 8-1 in the conference. That lone loss coming against Maranatha. Looking at the section, they're sitting right there. They're sitting good. A team that we both thought should have went to state last year. They've got a chance in this section, I think, to finish with probably a 2 seed. They're sitting in the 3-spot QRF wise now, but they did beat St. Paul Academy, so Minnehaha is probably your 1, and that's probably their main competition to get out of this section. But 7-0 in the section. Good, talented team. A lot of guys that can score on offense. Again, a team that is active and physical on defense. So they're going to play Minnehaha Academy on the 16th. That might set up who gets the number 1 seed. And then we're picking up a game on the 12th against Maranatha. That should be a really fun game. The one thing about St. Croix Lutheran, the QRF really doesn't like their wins a whole lot. So that number is not great, but coaches voting, we'll see what happens with that. Yeah,
for St. Croix Lutheran Academy, they've got 3 players averaging about 13 points or more. That's Herman, Avery, and Little. They've got 2 additional players averaging 6 or more points per game. So again, pretty even in scoring. They've won 2 straight games, outscoring their opponents 142-62 in that stretch. So it just goes to show that they've been able to really take care of business when they've needed to. 10 wins on the season so far. They went to the section championship last year, like you said. So we thought maybe potentially this could be a down year with all that they lost, but they've really managed well and been able to give themselves a chance here at this point in the season.
Last year, I think they had a couple higher end stars, if you want to call them that. This year, they seem like they've got more role players that seem to be gelling well. So that's good to see. I'll be looking forward to seeing that game against Maranatha. It should be a lot of fun. Could be a conference decider, or at least get the split of the conference. Let's jump over to the Metro East Conference, and this thing is just wide open with all of our teams. We got a chance to finally see Simley, and we saw them travel to St. Thomas Academy. Kind of what happened to St. Thomas in the game we saw against South St. Paul, St. Thomas did to Simley. They kind of ambushed them off the early part of that game, got up big, and then didn't give Simley a chance to get back in this game. But St. Thomas, a team that has won 4 straight, and they are sitting right there in second in the conference. Tartan's going to run away with the conference, but St. Thomas, a team that I think is hanging in there and looking pretty solid. Yeah, I mean, if you look at Simley really quick, you talked about them a little bit. They've lost 3 of their last 4, but their 1 win in that stretch came against a good South St. Paul team, so there's a positive there. Their 3 losses in January have all been by about 20 or more points, which is unfortunate. Their next tough game won't be until about mid-February when they play Tartan, though. They've already won more games than they won last year. And then you look at St. Thomas Academy sitting at 9-7 on the season. They've won 4 straight. But all 4 teams they've beaten have about or below 500 records, so nothing too impressive that stands out in that stretch. They only have 3 losses in the month of January, though, so that is a positive. That this is the time of year you really want teams heating up. You want to get your wins in January and early February before you get into the playoffs. They do have some tough opponents coming up. They'll play Tartan, they'll play South St. Paul. Those will be some tough games. There's incomplete player stats online, so not a lot to say about the individual players, but when you look at their overall record and their wins, most of their wins have come in blowout fashion, so they've really been able to take care of business. Well, and St. Thomas, a team that's got good depth. They've got good experience on that roster. A note from that last game we saw, Lars Austeris hit 1,000 points. We see another 1,000-point score. Seems to happen a lot on Town Square. It's like 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years alone that we've seen that. It's been a lot, but that was a lot of fun. He kind of scuffled that night, I think. I think that scoring that 1,000th point was on his mind. But they look good, deep team. I think they're going to be right in the fight for the playoffs. Simley, Justice Day, who was a freshman last year, he transferred to Tartan. So he's part of that Tartan squad. Connor Streef, a kid that's been playing for Simley since I think he's been a freshman. He's a senior now. He has kind of rounded out his game him a little bit more. He was fun to watch. The problem with Simley, I don't know what we're going to get come playoff time.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to be. They've had some issues this year, so who they're going to have able to play in the playoffs. But we'll see when that rolls around. That's going to be a really fun section. Kind of expanding on that section, South St. Paul. They've looked great. They've got those core 5 guys that are scoring the bulk of their points. Normally, you don't like to see a huge drop off after a handful of guys like that.
They've been so consistent.
Right, and they get really balanced scoring, and that's a fun team to watch. We're going to see them against Two Rivers in a couple of weeks here, which should be a lot of fun as well. Yeah,
and they've won 4 of their last 5, with their only loss coming to Simley, who we just talked about moments ago. And Simley, sitting right around 500, so it's not a terrible loss, but they've been playing really well. They have undefeated Tartan next, and then they play winless North St. Paul. So they get both ends of the spectrum in their next 2 games with a chance to see what they can do in those. I mean, you could really talk about any of those top 5 players and what they contribute to this team. I love the way they defend. I love the way they're scrappy. I feel like you could say that about a lot of South St. Paul teams. They do play a scrappy style, whatever sport it is. And I think you see that with this basketball team as well. They've scored 80 or more points 9 times this season, which is uber impressive. And 3 of their most recent 5 wins have been by about 20 or more points. So again, they seem to be playing really well down the final stretch of this regular season. They're getting consistent scoring from their stars. And even when they bring guys in off the bench, even if they're not getting points, they play hard for the team, which is always great to see as a coach. It might not show up on the stat sheet, but when you watch the game, you can tell that they're really giving their all and have contributed to wins for the South St. Paul team.
The Packers, the Cadets, and then Minneapolis South is kind of in that in the running to see who can get that number 1 seed in Section 3A. South St. Paul has the tiebreaker with that win over St. Thomas. They do play again on February 4th, so that's going to be a huge game coming up. For South St. Paul, a team that has been close to going to state the last handful of years. They still haven't been since 1970, so this is a chance for one of our teams to get out of this section. We'll see what happens. Let's finish with Two Rivers. And Two Rivers, like I said, we'll see them on the 11th at South St. Paul, and this is a team that, this conference, this Metro East, is just so talented, and you really, it's just, you don't have much of a night off with the exception of Hill Murray and North St. Paul. So, but Two Rivers, a team that kind of like South St. Paul, they can get scoring from a lot of different sources, but the offense is a little light, and the defense, they're giving up a little bit more than they should. Again, like we said last time, I just can't put my finger on why the wins don't follow this talent, but a team that I think will be fun to watch. And I should mention, we've got Simley at Two Rivers tomorrow night as well. So we'll get a chance to see Two Rivers a couple times here yet before the playoffs.
And they have won 2 in a row after losing 4 straight games. This is only the 2nd time this season that they've won more than a game in a row. So maybe this is the start of something good for this Two Rivers team. Unfortunately, they are at risk of having their worst season since going 3-14 in the 2020-21 season. They're at 6 wins right now, which is half of what they finished with last year. So they're, it's going to be tough to see what this team does the rest of the way, but there is a lot to like about them, and we'll see what happens the rest of the way out.
And once playoffs roll around, they're going to be trouble. This conference, or this section, is absolutely stacked. The top 4 teams are all QRF and record in general. Well, let's close with Athlete of the Week. I tell you what, just the game we covered, the Two Rivers at St. Clair Lutheran game, the top 2 stars for each team came out to play. They were tremendous. Izzy Van Nett had a great game. Callie Oakland and Maya Penn had a great game as well. But we're going to give Athlete of the Week to senior Sophia Amundsen. We didn't have stats online, but kind of what I was tracking the night of. I think she got about 28 points, and she had a ton of rebounds, 10 or 12 probably rebounds, if not more. She was not the high scorer in that game, but she did a lot of things to contribute, and she's been solid all year, all her career. She's a fun player to watch. She's a solid player. You know what you're going to get from her night in, night out. She was great that night again, too.
And I think that's what I was going to say about her is she's so reliable. She rarely makes big mistakes. She's somebody who's great defensively. She's good offensively. She's just a solid player, so good to see her contribute to that game, and especially when you've got so many star players you can talk about on that team, Callie Oakland and Maya Penn, players we've talked about many times as their Athlete of the Week for the girls' side. Nice to see someone else getting the nod here, so congratulations to Sophia Amundsen.
On the boys' side, we just talked about St. Thomas Academy Cadets, a game that Lars Austeris, their leading scorer, kind of didn't have it going that night, which usually he does. Normally Cadets can count on him for about 20 points. But in his struggles that night, Dominique Baez stepped up with 24 points. Max Hayes stepped up with 20. Those 2 guys were excellent. They both hit a bunch of threes. I think Baez had 5, Hayes had 4. Both solid that night. Just played really well. didn't really give Simley a chance to get back in that game once they got up. And both guys have been massive for the Cadets so far this year. Don't have stats for them to know what they're averaging all year, but the 2 games we've seen, both these guys big-time contributors, and could be a reason if Cadets can get back to the state tournament.
Well, and what's impressive to me is it seems in the games that we've seen of St. Thomas Academy, at least in recent years, if Austeris is on the bench, they're sometimes not getting the points, right? Sometimes it takes a little extra effort because he is so reliable. So to see those players step up in this game, obviously, you know, Baez is a great player. We've talked about him in many different sports over the years as Athlete of the Week, but him along with Hayes contributing to help their team out in a game where their star player wasn't getting the points that night was huge to see. So a big congratulations to those two for getting the Boys Athlete of the Week.
Well, brackets come out in just a handful of days, and then we're kind of in the flurry of playoffs. So we got some regular season stuff coming up as well. Should be a fun and busy 6 weeks or so coming up for playoffs. But for Alexis, I'm Toby. I want to thank you for joining us on SportsZone. We will see you next time.